All right. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about psychology and philosophy today. My big thing today I want to speak about is why we're here. It's the big question of the universe, and many, many men think and dwell on this simple question: why are we here? And also, how do we relate to our environment? And not only our environment, but our perceived environment, because I feel that we have a natural environment and then we have this made up perceived environment that we actually live in today. And I believe that might be the root cause of a lot of the mental illness that we suffer in our world today, because in our modern world, we're not uh, neurologically programmed the way we used to be, but our biological program still has those natural tendencies. And I think there's a conflict there going on. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thoughts are this is probably going to be one of my most favorite podcasts I've been on. Because you've hit on a lot of the things that are really important and interesting to me, both on a professional level from what I'm studying in school, and also on a personal level from the things that I look at in my own podcast. So, yeah, you've touched on a bunch of interesting stuff. Um, I think, just to start out the conversation broadly, I think that the meaning of everything is can be encapsulated sort of by the career arc of a famous physicist, Stephen Hawking, that you can follow throughout his written books. As you watch his writing, um, early in his career, he started with just hard science. He was adamantly against philosophy and philosophers, and anything that wasn't empirical and reductionist. And then in the middle of his career, as science sort of evolved, um, there was some discrepancies that came in that made people start to question how far reductionist science could take us, which is the paradigm that um, reality can be reduced to constituent components, atoms and quarks and these sorts of things. That at some basic level, there is discrete pieces of information that make up reality. And as some of these things were thrown into doubt, he sort of didn't want to, but accepted the anthropic principle, which is this idea that the reason the universe is the way that it is because we're here to see it. Um, and then the last book that he was working on with Simon Hertog when he died um, brought a new perspective into it, which is where he looked at it. And because the problem for lay people, right, is that when we look out into the universe as scientists, what we see is there's a lot of aspects of the universe that appear to be finely tuned for us, right? Whether it's the measures of the inflationary epoch at the beginning of the universe, or just various measures. You look at it and you go, man, there's a very small chance that things would turn out this way. It'd be like dumping out a barrel of pennies and they all land heads up, like a billion pennies land heads up. What are the chances of that, right? And so the anthropic principle says, well, really, the reason that happened is because it couldn't have happened. We wouldn't be here if it didn't happen that way. And so some of the scientific ways they use to get around that is what people are familiar with through pop culture nowadays, the multiverse, right? Um, if you were to dump out a barrel of pennies one time and all billion of them landed heads up, you'd go, there's no way. There has to be a God that orchestrated that whole thing, right? But if there's an infinite number of universes and you dump out the barrel an infinite number of times, at least one of those times, they'll all land heads up. And really, if you look at the mathematics, there's an infinite number of times it will land heads up. So that's sort of a mathematical way to get around it, but not all physicists and philosophers really feel that that's a legitimate way of um, looking at the issue. So um, some of Hawking's viewpoint on it was, well, a lot of the things that presuppose this are nonsensical, right? The idea that there was time before the universe, or there was something that happened before the universe. You know, if you just look at it as a self-contained thing, um, the problem with humanity is we want to take a God's eye view. We want to step outside of our bodies and say, "Oh, look, it's so weird that everything unfolded the way that it did." And in their last book, Hertog and Hawking said, you need to take a worm's eye view, right? Which is if, from just within our own context. And when you look at it that way, you say, well, things just unfolded the way that they did. There is nothing else to compare it to because this is the only universe that we have access to, the only point of reference that we have. And so there is no overarching big question or mystery. It's just this is the way it happened. And that's not completely satisfactory to everybody either.
Well, nobody truly knows.
Yeah. Yep. And so that's kind of the long answer. I apologize. I'm normally not somebody who consumes caffeine, and I'm on some coffee today, so I'm over the top. But yeah, no, but nobody knows, right? And so that's the important part for a philosopher is you'll never hear me mock somebody's religion, because for all I know, somebody might believe that the flying spaghetti monster created the world and all this happened and all that stuff. But if it's outside of the realm of scientific inquiry, then I can't prove that it's not true. And that's what science is about, is proving things that aren't true. So